Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Scale Smart podcast. I'm your host, Jacob, and also the founder of NextScale Growth. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Rasmus Steiniche, the CEO and co-founder of Neurospace. Rasmus, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jacob.
Pleasure. Rasmus, before we get into the flow of the podcast, do you mind telling me and also the audience a little bit more about yourself, what your expertise consists of, and what you guys do at Neurospace?
Sure, happy to. So I'm Rasmus. I'm the CEO who codes in Neurospace because I use approximately half of my time on CEO stuff and telling people about what we do, like we do here today. And then the other half is technical tasks. So I still try to stay close to the technical part of the operation. And Neurospace is a data and AI company founded 7 years ago. Primarily engineers, because we believe that a lot of companies out there need help building good data and AI solutions. We focus a lot on industrial clients and in general help with the green transition of the world through data and AI.
And being a CEO and being still involved in the technical side of things, like you said, being the CEO who codes, how do you manage that balance of one day potentially being a CEO, then the next day being a software developer?
And the problem is that this is not on a day-to-day basis, right? This is basically down to minutes. 1/2 hour, I need to be the CEO. The next half hour, I need to do something technical. And the task shifting, in general, when you do coding, you need focus time. And you don't really get that when you have a role like mine. So you need to sort of figure out personal efficiency. How do you sort of change your mindset from speaking, talking into I need deep focus time? And I only have half an hour. And I think that's pretty hard. I still don't have sort of the holy grail answer to this. But what I tend to do is I tend to cluster my day, where normally I have meetings in the afternoon, and then I use early morning, midday for coding tasks if I can.
And I think it's a very good skill to have, being able to go into that CEO role, then being able to transition into that technical role, because a lot of CEOs who I speak to, I've never really spoken to any who have still been involved in the technical side. I speak to CEOs every single day who are still involved from like the sales side and the acquisition side, but none really who are still involved in the technical side. So why is that, Rasmus? Is it a sense of like something you just don't want to let go of, or?
There are multiple reasons. So first up, I'm a software engineer by trade and have been coding most of my life. So I actually enjoy it a lot. The second part is that I have had different leaders, because before I joined Neurospace, I had approximately 7 years, 8 years of working for other companies. There were two type of leaders I liked a lot. There were the one where they sort of accepted that I were more technical skilled than them, and they wanted to understand what it is we are working on right now. And the other type of leader was actually leaders that coded themselves, and those are the people I like the most, because then you don't need to explain all sort of the foundation of what programming actually is. Because most people, and we see this a lot with vibe coding these days, right? LLMs are very good at writing code, but is that what a programmer do? Is that the only thing programmers do? Is that writing code? I'm not entirely sure about that. I think when I did it for a full-time job, I maybe used 60% of my time on everything else than coding, and then 40% on coding, right? Because you need to talk to people, you need to understand what to build, we need to draw up architectures and stuff.
With you being the CEO as well, I think scaling up any company comes with challenges and it comes with hurdles that you have to come over. So, what would you say, Rasmus, are some of the hurdles you had to come over being the early stages of the CEO role? And then what would you say are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing right now in scaling the business?
So I definitely think that going from, we started like 3 people and now we're 20. And if everything goes well, we will be like 40, 50 people in 3 years. And my role is constantly changing, right? It's never the same. That's also pretty hard to sort of figure out what is, does the company need the most from me right now? And I think this is something that all founders have to go through. And at some point, you also have to figure out, can I even deliver on what the business needs now? Or should, in my example, should I hire a CEO to be the CEO instead of me? Then I could maybe be the CTO or something, because I like obviously the technical part, and then I could do more of that, and then have a CEO that do some of the CEO stuff. For the companies that do merger and acquisitions, when do you hire a great CFO or something that can help with the merger and acquisitions part? Because that is so time consuming from what I have seen. So I think you constantly need to figure out, what should I evolve into to help the business? And then also, when should I let go? And letting go is obviously the hard part, right? But I'm currently in that mindset of, maybe there are some tasks that I'm doing now that I shouldn't be the only driver in, or maybe I shouldn't do it at all and another person should do it. A couple of months ago, we hired a person to do all the finances and stuff, bookkeeping internally, because we needed that, and we were using too much time on invoicing, figuring out if we are making money, not making money, which is pretty important when you're bootstrapping your business, right?
And I think you mentioned there, like, when to let go. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. I definitely struggle with myself as well. And I think there almost becomes a point where you become the bottleneck of the business. And I've just done it now, where I've just brought on like a marketing person, and my company is purely evolved around business development, marketing, client acquisition. So that's a big part of my business. And I'm like, whoa, like, this is scary. It took me a long time to realize, but I almost come to a point where it's like, I need to be focused on the acquisition and bringing in more clients. I can't be bringing in more clients, dealing with the finance, dealing with the marketing, dealing with this, dealing with that. And I'm like, I just ultimately am becoming the bottleneck of the reason why the company isn't scaling forward. And I had it not just in this business, but also my previous business of e-commerce. And it was almost like I'm finding these products, this product, and I'm like, this is taking so much time. I can't actually focus on scaling the business. So I need to actually take a step back and realize that I'm the one who's stopping this business from scaling. And I think it's really important for a CEO and for a founder, Rasmus, like ourselves as businesses, to be able to realize that and actually hold ourselves accountable, that actually we're the ones stopping the business from moving forward, because we're just holding on to that pure, I wouldn't say ego, but holding on to that thing we don't want to let go of.
I agree. And there's a lot of things you need to not just talk about, think about as a founder, right? But one of the things is that execution beats everything, right? But at some point, when you're big enough, people needs a strategy to move in the same direction. So when
Yeah.
do you sort of go from being part of the execution and all the decisions to letting go of some of that, so you have time to do more strategic stuff? How should we be positioned in the market? Do we have the right niche now? Could we improve on our competitive advantage? What is the forecast? Should we bring in more people? How do you think that will look in 3 years? If you are 50 people, how do we do leadership? Should we do a traditional organization with a hierarchy, or should we do something else? And all these types of questions you need to consider as a founder, and that takes time. You don't, or at least I don't, make great decisions when I'm in a hurry. I need to have time to reflect, right? So what I do is, actually, I try to put it in to my everyday. I have boxes where I cannot be booked, that is only for reflection, thinking
Yeah.
about the bigger picture things.
Yeah. And I think that's so important as well, because I got myself into the habit of literally taking back-to-back calls every single day. Every day I was in calls every single 12 p.m., 12:30 p.m., 1:30 p.m., 2:30 p.m., 3 p.m. And I'm like, I remember I showed it to someone who they were more of like a mentor to me. And they said, when do you have time to work on the business? And I was like, I don't.
I'm executing, you told me to
Yeah.
execute. I'm doing that.
Yeah, and it's like you're in calls all the time. Like, there needs to be a point of where you actually need time to This is when I was doing all the marketing and doing everything else. They're like, there needs to be a point where you need to deliver. And it's like, right now, you don't have the time to do that because you're just constantly in calls. And I think it's so important now because I allow myself a certain amount of calls every single day. And even if I feel like I can't fulfill that day, I know I'm going to be able to do it the other day. But what I was found myself doing was working on stupid things, which isn't going to drive the business forward. And I would rather now work 0 hours, go out, go to a nice coffee shop and relax, than work 3 hours doing something pointless, which isn't really doing anything. And I've only learned that in the past month or so. I was just thinking, how do I make myself work all of the time?
Yes.
And then you kind of like, I'm working, but I'm not actually working on important stuff. I'm just working on things which aren't that important. I could be reflecting right now. I could be having some downtime because downtime is so important as a
It
founder
is.
and a business owner.
Definitely
I
is.
think it's really
So
important to notice that.
I really think that there's a lot around efficiency when you start thinking about your personal efficiency, right? As a founder and you're growing something from zero to something, it will be a lot about how do I maximize the efficiency of my time, right? And then we do as you do, book all the calls, back-to-back meetings, constantly going to conferences and stuff, and we don't have downtime. And at some point when your business, yeah, it's hard to sort of set a point, but when you hit a certain point, actually what the business needs is for you to have downtime and starting to reflect a lot more on direction and what you should do over execution, and how you sort of transition from that insane output time focus to more of an outcome focus. What I'm thinking today should bring this outcome in 3 months, 6 months time, something like that. And then you
Mm,
need to convince other people in your business about this direction as well. That's another skill because
yeah,
it's so clear for you, right? You have been thinking about this for hours and hours. It's
yeah.
so clear. And then you talk to your marketing person, or I talk to my marketing person, and we say, we should do this. And they're like, what? We already have a plan. Why are you changing it up? And then you sort of need to go backwards and start reflecting together with them and sort of prove your point through what you were
Mm,
thinking. And that's actually also something I love doing these days, is just bouncing ideas off people. But as a CEO, you need to tell people that you're bouncing ideas and not giving orders, because else they will think that, okay, so we should do this now. So you need to be extremely clear in your communication around what you want out of people.
yeah. I think that's important, like as a CEO. And there's two types of leadership, which I think a CEO has as well. And one of them, I don't really understand how they actually keep their people happy. Is you've got a CEO who almost lets their team make decisions on their own to a certain extent, and isn't like a micromanager. Isn't like do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. They kind of let their team execute what they're good at because they're in them roles for a reason. But then you've got the CEOs who are like, this. You need to follow this X, Y, and Z needs to be done exactly how I say because I'm the CEO. You have to do this and you have to follow my orders. And I really don't know how they keep team members and they scale, because if you think of like that in a client, if you had a client coming to you and you were essentially telling the client what they want. So they come into you and say, right, we want this software development, that software development, and you go, well, no, we're going to do this.
Yeah,
You'd have no clients, and you'd just churn all your clients. And I think it's the same in being a leader as well. Is like having them two different types of leaderships. It's like being a CEO when you need to be a CEO, because obviously there's going to be a time and a place where you do need to put your foot down and say, right, no, actually, this needs to be done. And then I think there's another way of like just saying to the, let's say for the marketing people, you're in the role for a reason. Do what you're best at, and just let them get on with it.
exactly. And I think it's pretty hard, right? Because you have thought about all the tasks back in the day, and now you actually need to let go and let people sort of put in their own touch. I'm not the sort of correct person to ask, I think, because I'm a Danish citizens, and Danes are actually pretty good at respecting other people's competences and doing these flat structure, no hierarchy kind of organizations where you basically just put up a direction or a goal and then you let go and let them perform. I think the hardest part is when they don't perform. Then you need to figure out why,
Yeah.
and help them sort of achieve the goal, because obviously something is going sideways and that can be multiple things. But I really, really, really enjoy being a leader. I don't enjoy being a micromanager. There are a few things I don't want to discuss anymore in my software career, like should we use Git flow or trunk-based development? That's obviously always trunk-based development, and there are multiple reasons for this. I'm not going to share them in this podcast because that would be too boring. That there are some places where I say this is the standard of how we do in Neurospace. But a lot of what we do actually is having a request for comment process that looks a little bit like what they're doing at Google, where people can put forth suggestions as to what our standard should be in Neurospace, and then we actually accept them if 25% of the company think it's a good change.
That's interesting. That's very, very interesting.
It's to sort of combat the standards and everything from the top and try and
Yeah.
do it from the bottom up instead.
Yeah, got it. No, that's a really, really good way. Rasmus, just to finish off now, I know we've gone on a little bit of a tangent on this podcast, but I think it's been great. We've just spoken about pretty much all of leadership and what it takes being a CEO. So I've actually really, really enjoyed this one. But just to finish up, taking the company to that next level, it could be growing the revenue by a certain amount, because we've always got these types of goals. It could be, you mentioned you want to, in the next 3 years, you're at 20 now, you could potentially be at 40, 50 employees. You might want to expand into different regions. What are some of the goals you've got to expand Neurospace to that next level?
So we are very fortunate of being within data and AI, right? That's just a market that is going upwards all the time. So what we are working on right now is figuring out how much can we scale inside Denmark, because we are primarily Denmark based, and how much do we do in other regions. You need to, so regions are exotic to most we want to be in all the regions. That's cool. I'm in 20 markets. How many markets are you in? But you need to understand that every time you go into a new market, it will add on complexity. Even though if you're doing it in the EU, right? Germany, France, and Norway doesn't see personal data as the same thing. Obviously, Norway is not within the EU, but even France and Germany, which are under the same EU law, doesn't think about it the same way. And you need to understand that complexity every time you go into a new market. As we do, we are obviously a service company. We help others build on their IAN or their clouds, and they will have different security measures, different requirements for insurances and stuff like that. And you need to figure this out before you go into a market. So that's what I'm using a lot of time on now, is how much can we grow in each market, and when should we sort of go into a new market. And obviously, if we take Germany and France as an example, they like speaking in their own language. They are not particularly fond of English. How do you do that when you're primarily Danish based? And obviously we can talk Danish and English, but they want to talk French. How many people do we have that can speak French? Nobody. Okay, should we have someone? Right? Yeah. So that's what we're working on now. And then obviously figure out where all this AI, where's the AI era headed, because that's actually, I'm doing it full time, right? And I think it's pretty hard to do a strategic bet on what will be the next big thing in AI. And we're helping other companies make these strategic bets and build them. I think that requires a lot of time and a lot of reflection on maybe even thought leadership. I'm pretty, that word can mean a lot of things, but I think a lot about thought leadership right now, and thinking, how can we help our potential buyers make it more easy to buy us or another company? Maybe if we are better at guiding them.
That's really, really interesting. And if people wanted to reach out, Rasmus, and find out a little bit more about you, or maybe inquire, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, so if you want to follow me and hear about what we do, you should find me on LinkedIn. It's Rasmus Steiniche. I post almost every day about something, normally in Danish, but I have seen that LinkedIn is actually pretty good at translating content now. So it will go into all languages apparently, and we have a lot of discussions about how it is to be human and what it means to be human in the tech community, and then a lot of data and AI.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Rasmus, for joining me today on the podcast. It's been great having you on.
Thank you, Jakob.
Pleasure.